The wind carried the scent of dust and hay through the narrow street of Dry Creek, a small, forgotten town tucked between sunburned hills and dying fields. Wooden signs creaked above saloons and stores that had long since lost their shine, and the few souls who walked the road kept their heads low, speaking in murmurs like men afraid to disturb the ghosts that lingered there. The year was 1887, and though the railroad had brought a bit of life once, most of it had dried up with the last rain. The town had seen better days, but hope, in those parts, had always been a stubborn thing. That morning, before the sun climbed, high enough to burn away the cool air, something unusual appeared near the edge of the main road. She came walking slow, barefoot, her skirt torn at the hem, her dark hair tangled and matted from travel. In her hands she carried a small piece of wood on which she had painted, in shaky letters, "One food, one night." She sat down by an old trough, across from the blacksmith shop, placed the sign in front of her and waited without saying a word. At first, no one paid her much mind. Travelers passed through often, drifters, wanderers, folks running from the law or from life itself. But there was something different about her. Maybe it was the quiet in her eyes, or the way she didn't beg or plead. She simply sat there, still as the dry air, watching the dust swirl around her feet. Her face carried a strange mix of strength and weariness, the kind that told stories without words. By midday, a few men had gathered near the saloon porch, watching her from a distance. "She must be desperate," one muttered, spitting tobacco into the dirt. Another shrugged. "Ain't our concern. The sheriff will chase her off by sundown." But even as they spoke, none could quite look away. Inside the saloon, the piano stood silent. The barkeep, polishing a glass, leaned toward the window and squinted. "That one's not from around here," he said. "Looks like she's been walking for days." A cowboy sitting in the corner lifted his head at that. His hat shaded his eyes, but his jaw tightened slightly. He'd seen her too. From where he sat, he could make out the sign and the way her fingers traced the edge of it absent-mindedly, as if she was holding on to more than just wood, maybe a bit of pride, or what was left of it. He wasn't the kind of man who meddled in other folks' business. He came to town once a month for supplies, maybe a drink, and then rode back to his ranch where silence was his only company. But something about her wouldn't leave his mind. There was a loneliness there that felt too familiar, like looking in a mirror of the soul. The afternoon dragged on, and the air grew thick with heat. The woman hadn't moved much, though her lips were dry and her shoulders drooped with exhaustion. A few townsfolk passed her by, some offering pitying glances, others shaking their heads. No one stopped. Not even when a little boy brought her a small piece of bread, and she smiled faintly, thanking him without words. By evening, the sky turned the color of embers, and the lamps began to glow faintly in the windows. The sheriff finally came, his boots scuffing the dust as he approached. "Ma'am," he said, his tone firm but not unkind, "you can't stay here. Folks don't take kindly to strangers sitting out like this." She lifted her head slowly, her eyes meeting his. There was something in them that made the sheriff pause, a quiet plea, a kind of dignity that didn't fit with her worn clothes. "I ain't hurting nobody," she said softly. "Just hungry." He sighed, tipping his hat. "This town's got little enough for its own. Best move along before trouble finds you." She nodded, but didn't move. The sheriff hesitated, then walked away, muttering under his breath. He'd done his duty, but even he couldn't shake the feeling that something about her didn't belong to the dust and despair of Dry Creek. As night began to fall, a few of the men from the saloon came wandering out, half drunk and half curious. Their laughter echoed down the street as they drifted toward her. She stiffened when they drew near, clutching the sign close to her chest. "Well now," one of them slurred. "Ain't this something? A lady trading food for a night. That's a new kind of deal." The others chuckled darkly, and she shrank back, though her eyes didn't drop. Before any of them could step closer, a voice cut through the air. "That's enough." The men turned. The cowboy stood there, tall and steady, his hand resting near his belt but not yet on the gun. His eyes were hard, cold even, but his voice carried no anger, just warning. "She ain't for you," the drunkest of the men sneered. "And who says she's yours to speak for?" "I do," the cowboy said simply, and stepped forward. The group wavered, recognizing him now. The quiet rancher who lived miles out. The one who didn't talk much but whose word carried weight. After a moment they backed off, muttering as they stumbled away into the night. When it was quiet again, the woman lifted her gaze. The cowboy walked closer, stopping a few feet from her. "You don't belong here," he said quietly. "I don't belong anywhere," she answered, her voice almost a whisper. He studied her for a long moment, then reached into his saddlebag and tossed a small wrapped bundle onto the ground before her. "Bread, jerky, water," he said. "Eat." She looked at the bundle, then at him. "And the sign?" He looked down at the wooden piece between them, the words still faintly visible in the lamplight. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "You can put it away. You won't be needin' it tonight." She blinked, unsure what he meant. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. The night had grown still, the air heavy with the quiet hum of crickets. Finally, he said, "Because you're comin' with me, before someone else decides to take you up on that offer." Her heart raced at the sound of his words. She didn't know this man, didn't even know his name. But there was something in his tone that carried both command and care, as if he wasn't saving her out of pity, but out of a sense of something deeper, something he didn't understand himself. "I didn't ask for saving," she murmured. He met her eyes. "Maybe not, but you need it." She looked down at her bare feet, then at the dark road stretching out behind him. It led to nowhere she knew, but it was better than staying where she was. Slowly she stood, her legs trembling. The sign fell from her hands, landing in the dirt. As she stepped toward him, the wind picked up again, lifting the dust around them in small spirals. He offered her a place behind him on the horse, and after a moment's hesitation, she climbed up. The sound of the rain snapping broke the silence, and they rode away from Dry Creek without another word. The town faded behind them, swallowed by darkness. The stars hung bright above the desert, and for the first time in a long while, she felt the faint spark of something she had forgotten: hope. But as they rode deeper into the night, a shadow seemed to follow them, long and quiet. The cowboy's jaw was set tight, his eyes fixed ahead, as if he knew that taking her wasn't just an act of kindness. It was the start of something that would change everything. She didn't know where they were going or what waited beyond the next ridge. But one thing was certain. The man who claimed her before the others might have just bound his fate to hers, for better or worse. And in the stillness of the desert, night, beneath the whispering stars, both of them felt the weight of that truth pressing close, even if neither dared to speak it yet. The night stretched wide and quiet as the horse carried them farther from town. The woman clung to the saddle horn, her fingers trembling against the worn leather. She didn't ask where they were going, and the cowboy didn't say. The silence between them was heavy but not cruel, just two strangers bound by a strange twist of chance, each with their own ghosts. The sound of hooves on dry ground echoed steady, like a heartbeat in the emptiness. After a while, she found her voice. "Why'd you help me?" she asked softly, her words barely carrying over the wind. He didn't answer right away. "Didn't seem right to leave you there," he finally said. "That town eats up folks like you. Folks like me?" He hesitated, glancing back over his shoulder. "Lost ones." She looked away, her eyes on the distant hills. "You don't know anything about me." "No," he said. "But I know the look." They rode on until the first streaks of dawn painted the horizon. The sun rose slow, setting the world on fire with gold. The land stretched wide, dotted with scrub and the faint outlines of fences long broken. Finally, the cowboy pulled the reins and slowed the horse. Ahead, a small ranch came into view. A cabin, a barn with a sagging roof, and a corral that had seen better days. Smoke rose faintly from the chimney. "This your place?" she asked. He nodded. "What's left of it?" He dismounted, tying the horse to the post. She stayed seated for a moment, unsure whether she should follow. "You can come down," he said quietly, as if sensing her hesitation. Her bare feet touched the cold ground, and she winced slightly at the feel of the dirt and stone. He noticed but said nothing. She followed him to the porch, where an old hound lifted its head and wagged its tail once before settling back down. Inside, The air was warm from the stove. The cabin was small, only one room with a bed in the corner, a table, a few chairs, and shelves lined with tools and old books. He motioned toward the chair. "Sit. You look like you haven't eaten in days." She sat quietly while he prepared something simple: beans, bread, and coffee that smelled bitter but comforting. When he set the plate before her, she hesitated before whispering, "Thank you." He nodded. "Eat." As she ate, he leaned against the table, arms crossed, studying her in silence. She was young, maybe mid-20s, though her eyes carried the weight of someone older. There was something guarded in her movements, as if every small kindness might vanish if she trusted it too much. When she finished, he spoke again. "You got a name?" She hesitated, then said, "Lena." He nodded slowly. "You can call me Cole." The room went quiet again. The fire crackled, and a breeze whistled through the cracks in the window frame. Lena's eyes wandered to the small shelf near the bed, where a photograph sat in a wooden frame. It showed a young woman holding a baby, both smiling faintly. She didn't ask, but she didn't need to. The pain in Cole's silence spoke for itself. After a long pause, she asked, "You live out here alone?" Mostly. He looked toward the photograph. "Used to be different. My wife and boy. They're gone." She didn't press. The quiet stretched again, filled only by the sound of wind outside. She could tell he wasn't a man who talked about his past, and she wasn't one to share hers either. Still, something unspoken passed between them, a fragile understanding that both carried scars time hadn't healed. When evening came, Cole offered her a blanket and pointed toward the small cot near the fire. "You can rest there. Tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next." She nodded, though her mind spun with uncertainty. She didn't know what next meant anymore. The world she'd known was gone, swept away by choices and fate she couldn't undo. For now, all she could do was stay. That night, sleep came slow. She lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of Cole moving outside, tending to the animals, the soft clatter of tools. The stars outside were bright, and the moonlight spilled through the cracks, painting the room in silver. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. In that moment, she wondered what he truly wanted. No one helped for free, not in this world, not anymore. But when she remembered the way he'd stood between her and those men in town, she felt something stir. A quiet sense of safety she hadn't felt in a long time. The next morning, she woke to the smell of coffee. Cole was already outside, fixing the fence by the corral. She stepped out, the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. The sun was warm, the air filled with the hum of cicadas. "You can help if you want," he said without looking up. She frowned slightly. "With what?" He pointed toward a pile of boards. "Hand me those nails." She hesitated, then walked over, kneeling beside him. He showed her how to hold the board steady, how to hammer it straight. Her hands were rough by the end of it, but she didn't complain. There was something grounding about the work, something simple and honest that made her forget for a while how lost she really was. As the days passed, a quiet rhythm settled between them. She helped around the cabin, washing dishes, feeding the horse, sweeping the porch. He worked from dawn till dusk, tending to chores that seemed endless. They spoke little, but the silence between them grew easier. Still, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that something about this place carried a shadow. Some nights she heard him pacing outside long after dark, his footsteps slow and heavy. Other times, she caught him staring at the horizon, as if waiting for something or someone that never came. One afternoon, as the wind picked up and clouds rolled across the hills, she found herself wandering to the barn. Inside, she noticed an old saddle hanging on the wall, covered in dust. Beneath it was a small wooden box. Curiosity got the better of her. She opened it and found a few trinkets: a child's toy horse, a small silver locket, and a faded note. She unfolded the paper carefully. "I'll be back before spring. Don't wait up if the river's high. Love you both." Her breath caught. She closed the box quickly, her heart pounding. When she turned, Cole was standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "You shouldn't be in here," he said quietly. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I wasn't," he shook his head. "It's fine, just some things are better left where they are." She nodded and slipped past him, feeling the weight of his words linger. That night he didn't come inside until late, and when he did, he barely spoke. The next morning she found him saddling his horse. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Town," he said. "Supplies. Can I come?" He paused, then nodded. "If you're up for it." The ride back to Dry Creek was quiet. The town looked no different, dusty, worn, and tired. People stared as they rode in together. Whispers followed, but Cole ignored them. He tied the horse outside the general store and told her to stay close. Inside, she helped gather what he needed: flour, salt, candles, and some coffee beans. But as they stepped back outside, a man in a gray coat approached, his eyes narrowing as he looked at Lena. "Well, I'll be," he said slowly. "You again," Lena stiffened. She remembered his face, one of the men from the night before. He smirked, glancing at Cole. "Didn't figure you for the rescuing type." Cole's jaw tightened. "You got something to say it." The man's grin widened. "Just wondering how long before she turns on you too. Women like her don't stick around unless there's something in it for 'em." Before Cole could respond, Lena spoke quietly. "You don't know me." The man chuckled. "No, but I know your kind." Cole stepped closer, his voice low but sharp. "You should leave." The man's smirk faded when he saw the look in Cole's eyes. He spat in the dirt and walked off, muttering under his breath. Lena stood still, her hands trembling slightly. "He's right about one thing," she said after a moment. "You don't know me either." Cole looked at her, his expression softening. "Then tell me," she shook her head. "Not yet." They rode home in silence. The sky darkened as thunder rumbled in the distance. Cole didn't press her, but his mind churned with questions. Who was she really? What was she running from? That night, as the storm broke over the valley, lightning flashing across the plains, Lena stood by the window, watching the rain pour down. She could feel the past pressing close, whispering reminders of things she'd tried to bury, and somewhere in that storm, she realized something. No matter how far she ran, the truth would find her. It always did. Cole watched her from the shadows, sensing that the peace they'd found was fragile, like glass waiting to shatter. And when it did, he knew neither of them would ever be the same again. The storm lingered through the night, beating hard against the roof, and by morning, the world was soaked and still. Mud filled the yard, and the air smelled of wet earth. Cole was already outside by the time Lena stepped out, his hat pulled low as he checked the fence line. She stood on the porch watching him for a while, her thoughts tangled. The memory of that man's sneer in town still clung to her like a stain she couldn't wash away. Cole didn't say much when he came back inside, just brushed the water from his coat and poured coffee into 2 tin cups. He slid one toward her and nodded to the chair. "Drink up. We'll have a long day ahead." She took it but didn't sit right away. "Cole," she said quietly, "you ever had someone look at you and think they already knew your story?" He looked up at her over the rim of his cup. "More times than I can count. Then you know how it feels." He nodded, setting the cup down. "Yeah, but I also know that sometimes folks are wrong, and sometimes they're not." Her eyes flickered, but she said nothing more. The words hung between them, heavy as the damp air. By noon, the sky had cleared, and Cole hitched up the wagon to haul wood from the edge of the property. Lena offered to go along, and he didn't refuse. They rode out quietly, the wagon creaking over uneven ground. The land was wide and quiet, endless hills that rolled toward the horizon, dotted with thorn bushes and dying grass. As they loaded the wood, Lena's gaze wandered toward the ridge in the distance. A line of smoke rose faintly beyond it, curling into the blue sky. "Someone out there?" she asked. Cole glanced up. "Old mining camp. Been empty for years, far as I know. You ever go there?" "Once or twice," he said. "Not much left but bones and bad memories." She shivered slightly, pulling her shawl closer. "Still, smoke means someone's there." He frowned and squinted toward the hills, his jaw tightening. Could be travelers. Could be trouble. They said little on the ride back, but the thought of that smoke stayed with both of them. That night after dinner, Cole lit a lamp and unrolled a map on the table. "That camp used to be run by the Dawson brothers," he said, tapping a finger on the ridge. "Mean bunch. Some folks say they still haunt the place." "Haunt it?" she asked, half smiling. "Not ghosts," he said. "Just men who don't know when to quit." Lena looked down at the map, then up at him. "You think they're still alive?" He shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time trouble found its way back to these hills. Outside, the night was quiet again, but both of them felt the weight of something unseen stirring out there in the dark. Over the next few days, things began to shift in small ways. Cole noticed hoofprints near the fence line that didn't belong to his horse. Lena caught sight of a figure one evening near the barn, gone before she could call out. When she told Cole, he went out with his rifle, scanning the trees but found nothing. Still, The feeling of being watched settled over the ranch like dust that wouldn't wash away. Meanwhile, Lena's own restlessness grew. She tried to focus on the work, mending clothes, tending to the small garden, but her thoughts wandered. Every noise outside made her tense. Every shadow looked like it might reach for her. One afternoon, when Cole was out in the pasture, she opened the locket she'd found in the barn again. The picture inside was almost faded now, but she could still make out a woman's smile and a child's eyes that looked so much like Cole's. She closed it quickly, guilt pressing against her chest, but the moment she turned, she found him standing in the doorway. "You were looking through my things again," he said quietly. She froze. "I didn't mean to. He stepped closer, his eyes hard. "That locket's the only thing I got left of them." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have." He took a breath, then let it out slowly. The anger drained from his face, replaced by weariness. "Just leave it be, Lena. Some memories ain't meant to be touched." She nodded, tears burning at the edge of her eyes. "I understand." But later that night, she sat awake, staring at the fire and wondering what had truly happened to his family. She'd heard enough stories on the road, men who lost their loved ones to sickness, to raids, to their own mistakes. Still, something about the way he avoided talking about it felt heavier than grief alone. A few days later, trouble came knocking. It was near dusk when the dog started barking. Cole stepped onto the porch, hand on his revolver, and saw 3 riders approaching through the dust. They stopped a few yards from the gate, their faces half hidden under hats. The one in front, a tall man with a scar down his cheek, called out, "Evening, friend. Mind if we water our horses?" Cole's tone stayed even. "Depends who's asking." The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Name's Dawson. We're just passing through." Lena froze inside the cabin. The name sent a chill through her. She remembered the map, the camp, the smoke. Cole nodded slowly. "Water's in the trough. Don't stay long." Dawson's gaze drifted toward the cabin door. "Appreciate it. Heard there's a woman around here. You keeping company these days, Cole?" Cole's hand twitched near his belt. "Ain't your concern." The man grinned wider. "Just making conversation. Word travels, you know. That town you ride into, Dry Creek, folks say you brought home a stray." Lena stepped into the doorway before Cole could speak. "I'm not anyone's stray." Dawson tilted his head, amused. "Well, now look at that. She's got fire." His tone turned colder. "You sure you know who you're riding with, lady?" Cole's voice cut through the air like steel. "You done talking?" Dawson smirked. "For now." He tipped his hat. "We'll be seeing you, neighbor." The men rode off, the sound of their laughter fading into the distance. When they were gone, Lena turned to Cole. "You know him." "Used to," he said. "Long time ago," she stepped closer. "He's dangerous. So am I." He said it flatly, but the meaning sank deep. That night, neither of them slept much. Cole sat by the window, rifle across his knees, while Lena lay awake listening to the wind. Somewhere far off, she thought she heard horses again. By morning, they found one of the fences cut clean through and hoof prints leading toward the river. Cole's cattle, what few he had left, were gone. He stared at the ground for a long time, his face unreadable. Then he said, "They want me to come after 'em." "Then don't," she said quickly. "You'll get yourself killed." He looked at her, eyes dark with something like determination or maybe vengeance. "Can't let men like that walk all over me." "Not again." She stepped forward, grabbing his arm. "What happened before, Cole? Tell me." He hesitated, then said quietly, "They came through years back, claimed they needed help. I let 'em stay. 2 days later, my wife was gone. Found her miles from here. My boy, too." His voice broke for the first time. "They left me with nothing." Lena's hand fell away. "And now they're back." "Yeah," he said. "And I ain't letting it happen again." Before she could speak, he saddled his horse. "Stay here. Lock the door." She watched him ride out toward the ridge, dust rising behind him. The sun hung low, bleeding red across the sky, but she couldn't just stand there. Not when the past was clawing its way back into his life, and maybe into hers too. She packed a small bag and followed, keeping to the tree line, her heart pounding with each step. By the time she reached the edge of the ridge, dusk had fallen. She spotted the faint flicker of firelight in the distance. The camp, voices carried through the air, Dawson's laughter, low and cruel. Then another voice, quieter but sharp. "Cole's." She crept closer, her breath shallow. Through the brush, she could see them, Cole standing firm, gun drawn, and Dawson facing him with a smirk that sent a chill down her spine. "You should have stayed on your land, Cole," Dawson said. "You got nothing I want except maybe her." Cole didn't flinch. "You won't touch her." Dawson's smile widened. "You can't protect what ain't yours." Lightning flashed across the horizon, lighting their faces for a split second. Lena's pulse raced. She wanted to run, to scream, to do anything, but she couldn't move. Then she heard Dawson say something that froze her blood. "You think she told you everything about herself? Ask her what she did before Dry Creek." Cole's eyes flickered, confusion breaking through his anger. "What do you mean?" Dawson chuckled darkly. "You really don't know, do you?" Before he could finish, thunder cracked overhead, and everything erupted into chaos. Lena pressed a hand over her mouth to keep from crying out, her heart hammering. The truth Dawson hinted at, whatever it was, now hung between them like a fuse waiting to catch fire. And as the storm rolled in again, she realized the past wasn't just haunting Cole's life. It was coming for hers too. The thunder rolled again, low and deep, shaking the ground beneath Lena's feet. Rain began to fall, first in soft drops, then heavier until it drowned the sound of her own breath. She crouched low in the brush, her eyes fixed on the firelight ahead where Cole and Dawson stood facing each other, guns drawn, words lost in the storm. The fire hissed as the rain hit it, sending up steam that blurred their shapes into shadows. The air felt charged, like the whole world was holding its breath. Dawson's men circled the camp, their rifles glinting in flashes of lightning. Cole's stance didn't waver. He was outnumbered, but he stood tall, his jaw set tight, the rain dripping from his hat brim. "Put the gun down, Cole," Dawson called, his voice cutting through the wind. "Ain't no need for this to end bad." "It already did," Cole replied, his voice calm but cold. "The day you came back here," Dawson smirked. "Still holding on to the past, huh? I told you back then. It wasn't personal. You killed my family. Your family got in the way." Dawson's grin widened, cruel and unbothered. "Now you're making the same mistake again." Cole fired first. The shot cracked through the storm, echoing off the hills. One of Dawson's men went down and chaos exploded. Gunfire flared through the dark, thunder mixing with the sound of bullets, horses rearing, men shouting. Lena ducked behind a rock, her heart racing as sparks from gunfire lit the night. Cole moved fast, shifting behind a fallen log, firing with steady aim. He took down another man before the rest scattered for cover. The rain came down harder, making it near impossible to see. Lena could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She knew she couldn't just hide. Cole was alone against too many, but if she ran out there she could draw fire, or worse. Still, something inside her wouldn't let her stay crouched in the mud while he fought for his life. Gripping the small pistol she'd taken from the cabin earlier, she crawled closer, keeping to the shadows. Each step brought her nearer to the blaze of the campfire and the figures moving through the storm. Then she heard Dawson shout, "You think you're the only one with ghosts, Cole? Ask her what she did before you saved her." Lena froze. Cole's voice came back through the rain, hard and sharp. "What are you talking about?" Dawson laughed. "She didn't tell you, did she? About that town south of here, Mesa Hollow, about the marshal who went missing after taking her in." Cole's gun lowered slightly, confusion flashing in his eyes. "You're lying, am I?" Dawson said, his grin visible even through the rain. "She's got blood on her hands, same as me." The words cut through the noise like a blade. Lena's breath hitched. She wanted to scream that it wasn't true, but part of it was. She'd run from Mesa Hollow months ago, after things went wrong. After she defended herself against a man who tried to take more than she offered. The marshal had stepped in, and in the fight that followed she'd fired the gun. He hadn't gotten back up. Cole didn't know. No one did. She'd been running ever since. Lightning split the sky, and for a heartbeat, everything was lit bright as day. Cole stood facing Dawson, the storm raging around them, doubt flickering across his face. Dawson saw it too, and his grin deepened. "That's right," he shouted. "You took in a killer. Maybe you two got more in common than you think." Lena's body trembled. She wanted to run to Cole to explain, but before she could move, one of Dawson's men caught sight of her in the dark. "Boss!" he yelled. "Over here!" Gunfire erupted again. Bullets ripped through the rain, striking the ground near her feet. She dove behind a boulder, mud splashing against her face. Cole turned sharply at the sound, firing back at the man who'd spotted her. "Lena!" he shouted through the storm. "Stay down!" She tried, but the moment she moved, another shot rang out and clipped the rock beside her. She gasped, the sound swallowed by thunder. Cole took cover behind a tree, his revolver nearly empty. He reloaded quickly, his eyes darting between Dawson's men and the spot where Lena hid. He knew she shouldn't be here. He told her to stay back. But part of him wasn't surprised she'd followed. She had the same stubborn streak he did. Dawson stepped out from behind the wagon, gun raised. "You can't win, Cole. You never could. You should have stayed buried with your ghosts." Cole fired again, but Dawson ducked behind cover, the bullet whizzing past. Then something unexpected happened. The firelight caught movement near Dawson's side. A dark figure, small but steady. Lena had slipped out from behind the rock and was moving through the smoke toward the back of the camp. She was shaking, soaked to the bone, but her eyes were fierce. She crept up behind one of Dawson's men who was reloading his rifle and swung a broken branch hard across his shoulder. He stumbled, turned, and Cole took the shot, dropping him before he could fire. "Get out of here!" Cole shouted again, his voice desperate. But Lena didn't run. She darted closer to the campfire, taking cover behind the overturned wagon. She could see Dawson now, moving toward Cole, gun raised and eyes gleaming through the rain. Her hands trembled on the pistol, but she steadied them, aiming through the smoke. Before she could fire, Dawson shouted, "You think she's worth dying for? Look at her, Cole. She'll drag you down same as the rest of us." Cole didn't answer. He stepped out into the open, his hat gone, rain running down his face, his revolver raised and steady. "You talk too much," he said. The next moments blurred. A flash of lightning, 2 shots fired almost at once. The sound tore through the night. Lena screamed his name. When the light faded, Cole was on one knee clutching his shoulder. Dawson was down, his gun fallen in the mud, but he wasn't dead. He groaned, reaching for the weapon again. Lena didn't think. She rushed forward, kicking the gun away just as Dawson lunged toward it. He grabbed her wrist instead, pulling her down into the mud. She struggled, the pistol slipping from her grip. His strength was overwhelming, his fingers digging into her arm. Cole tried to stand, but pain forced him back down. "Lena!" Dawson's voice hissed close to her ear. "You should have stayed in that town, girl. You and me, same blood, same dirt." Lena fought back, her nails clawing at his coat. "You don't know anything about me!" He laughed even as the rain poured harder. "Oh, I know enough. You kill when you have to. I can respect that." Her hand found a rock in the mud. Without thinking, she swung it. Once, twice. He fell back with a groan, his grip loosening. She scrambled away, gasping as Cole reached her side. Grabbing the pistol from the ground, he aimed it at Dawson, but before he could pull the trigger, the wounded man started laughing through the blood on his lips. "Go ahead," he coughed. "Ain't gonna change what she did. You can't save her from herself." Cole's hand shook slightly, the rain running down his arm, mixing with the blood from his wound. He looked at Lena, her face pale and wet, her eyes wide with fear and guilt. "Cole," she whispered. "It's true." What he said, it's not all of it, but it's true. He lowered the gun slowly. "Now's not the time." Dawson groaned again, rolling onto his side. "No time left for any of us," he spat. "You'll see." Cole's jaw tightened. He kicked Dawson's gun farther into the mud, then turned to Lena. "We need to go. More'll come." She nodded, still shaking. Together they staggered back toward the horse, the storm raging around them. Every step felt heavier, every sound sharper. Behind them the campfire sputtered and hissed, the smoke rising into the rain like a dying ghost. They didn't speak as they rode away through the darkness. Cole's arm bled through his sleeve, but he didn't complain. Lena held on to him from behind, her mind spinning with everything that had just happened, and everything that was about to. The hills stretched ahead, black against the lightning. The wind howled through the valley, carrying the sound of thunder like distant drums. Cole's voice finally broke the silence. "When we get back, you'll tell me everything." "No more running," Lena swallowed hard. "I will." He didn't respond, but his shoulders stiffened beneath her hands. As they neared the ranch, the rain began to ease, but the weight between them didn't lift. Both knew that once the storm ended, something far worse was waiting. Truth, revenge, or both. The house came into view through the mist, dark and silent. But as they drew closer, Cole stopped suddenly. The front door was wide open. The lantern inside flickered weakly in the wind. Lena's breath caught. "Cole!" He raised his gun, scanning the shadows. The dog didn't bark. The yard was too still. Something or someone had been there. And as lightning lit up the sky one last time, they saw it. Muddy footprints leading from the porch straight into the dark woods beyond the fence. Cole's grip on the reins tightened. They weren't alone, he muttered. Lena's heart thudded in her chest. The storm might have passed, but what waited in that darkness was far from over. And as the thunder faded behind them, both knew they were riding straight toward the moment that would decide everything, past, truth, and whether either of them would survive the night. The woods were quiet except for the soft dripping of rain from the branches. The storm had passed, but its weight still hung in the air. Cole and Lena dismounted near the fence line, their boots sinking into the damp ground. The footprints leading into the trees were still fresh, pressed deep in the mud. Cole knelt down, running his hand over them. 2 sets, he said quietly. 1 light, 1 heavy. Lena glanced toward the open cabin door. Who would come here? Cole's gaze hardened. Someone who knew Dawson wouldn't come back. The words hit her like a chill. She looked over her shoulder, half expecting to see movement in the trees, but the forest only whispered with the wind. The air smelled of pine and wet soil, and somewhere in the distance an owl cried out. They moved carefully toward the cabin. The door creaked as Cole pushed it open. Inside, everything looked the same and yet wrong. The table was overturned, papers scattered, the oil lamp flickering low. The floor was tracked with mud, a trail leading toward the back room. Cole motioned for Lena to stay behind him as he stepped forward, gun raised. He could hear the faint sound of breathing, uneven and weak. Then a voice spoke from the corner. "Don't shoot, mister." A boy stepped out, no older than 15, holding up his hands. His face was pale, his clothes torn and soaked through. Cole lowered his gun slightly but didn't relax. "You're far from home, kid." "You with Dawson?" The boy shook his head quickly. "No, sir. He took my brother. Said we'd work for him or he'd..." His voice cracked. "When I saw him fall, I ran. I didn't know where else to go." Lena stepped forward gently. "You came here for help?" He nodded, wiping rain from his face. "Didn't mean to scare you. I just didn't know what to do." Cole exchanged a glance with her, then sighed, lowering his revolver. "You picked a dangerous night to wander." "I'm sorry," the boy whispered. Cole holstered his gun and looked around the room. "Your brother, was he one of Dawson's men?" The boy hesitated, then nodded. "He didn't want to be. Dawson made him." Lena's expression softened. She could see the fear in his eyes, the kind that comes from losing too much too young. "You can rest here for the night," she said quietly. "We'll figure out what to do come morning." Cole didn't say anything, but he gave a small nod. The boy sat near the fire while Lena lit another lamp. The soft glow filled the room, washing the shadows from the walls. For the first time in days, silence settled over them. The gunfire, the storm, Dawson's last words, they all seemed to fade into the crackle of the fire, but neither Cole nor Lena could escape what lingered beneath it all. When the boy finally drifted to sleep, Lena stepped outside, needing the cold air. The moon broke through the thinning clouds, casting silver light across the wet fields. She could hear the river running strong from the rain, the sound steady and alive. Cole followed her out after a few minutes, his arm still bandaged, his face drawn, but calm. "You did good back there," he said softly. "I just did what I had to." "That's what I said once," he murmured. She looked up at him, the wind tugging her hair loose from its braid. "You don't believe that anymore?" He took a deep breath. "I believe there's a difference between surviving and living. Dawson forgot that difference a long time ago." Lena's gaze drifted toward the horizon. "What about me?" "You heard what he said. I heard him try to use your past against you," Cole said. "But a man like that only knows how to twist truth. Whatever happened, it's behind you now." She shook her head. "You don't understand. I killed that marshal. I didn't mean to, but I did. And I've been running ever since." Cole's eyes softened. "You defended yourself. Sometimes the line between right and wrong gets blurred when you're fighting to stay alive." Tears welled in her eyes. "You think that makes it easier to live with?" "No," he said quietly. "But it means you don't have to carry it alone anymore." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving the world still and washed clean. "Dawson said something before he fell," she said finally. "He said we couldn't change who we are." Cole glanced at the moonlight reflecting off the wet grass. "Maybe he was right about himself, but not about you." When they went back inside, the boy was still asleep, curled up near the fire. Cole set another log on the flames and eased into the chair by the window. His body ached from the fight, but his mind stayed sharp. He could feel something shifting, an end to the long years of anger that had driven him. By morning, the sky had turned soft and gold. Mist curled along the valley and the birds began to stir. Cole went out to the porch with a mug of coffee, staring toward the distant hills. Lena joined him, her hair damp from washing, her face calmer than he'd ever seen it. "What will you do now?" she asked. He looked out at the land stretching far and wide. "Fix what's left of this place. Maybe give it another chance. And the boy? He stays till he's ready to leave. Maybe he'll help with the horses. He's been through enough to earn a bit of peace." Lena smiled faintly. "Peace feels like something we've both been chasing." He glanced at her, a hint of warmth in his eyes. "Maybe now we can stop running." Days passed slow and steady. The air grew warmer, and the ranch began to breathe again. Cole repaired the fences, Lena tended the garden, and the boy, whose name they learned was Eli, found his place among them. Quiet but determined. At night, the three of them would sit by the fire, telling stories or just listening to the sounds of the open land. There was still pain between the words, memories that didn't fade easily, but there was also a sense of beginning, something neither Cole nor Lena had believed possible before. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the hills in amber light, Lena walked out to the pasture where Cole was working. The horses grazed quietly, their coats shining in the fading sun. She stopped beside him. "I've been thinking," she said softly. "Maybe it's time I stop being afraid of what's behind me." He leaned on the fence rail, nodding. "The past has a way of following us till we face it." "I want to go back to Mesa Hollow someday," she said. "Not to stay, just to tell the truth." He studied her for a moment, then said, "When you do, I'll be there." Her eyes met his, and for the first time since they'd met, there was no fear in them, only peace. As twilight settled in, the world grew quiet again. The land stretched out before them, endless and forgiving. The scars of the past were still there, but they no longer defined who they were. Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out the small silver locket he'd carried for years, the only thing left from his family. He opened it, looked at it one last time, then closed it and placed it in Lena's hand. "It's time to let the ghosts rest," he said. She closed her fingers around it. "Then we both will." The wind stirred the grass, carrying the faint scent of rain and wild sage. In the distance, the sky glowed with the promise of another storm, but this time it didn't feel like something to fear. It felt like renewal. As night fell over the ranch, the three of them, Cole, Lena, and Eli, sat together on the porch, watching the stars come out one by one. The silence between them was easy now, filled not with sorrow but with understanding. Cole looked out at the horizon and said quietly, "Sometimes the hardest road leads you home." Lena smiled, her hand brushing against his. "And sometimes the people you find along the way are the reason you keep walking." The crickets began to sing, and a soft breeze swept across the plains. The fire inside the cabin flickered warmly through the window, a steady light in the dark. For the first time in a long while, they weren't running, from pain, from the past, or from themselves. The world was still rough and uncertain, but they had found something worth holding on to: trust, forgiveness, and the quiet strength to start again. And as the night deepened over the open land, the sound of peace, soft and real, settled like a promise in the air, reminding them that every storm, no matter how fierce, eventually leads to calm.